We've been in business for 11 years. This is our 11th growing season. We've been on 3 different farms. However, we've been on our home farm here in Mandan for 5 years. Veggies, of course. We do a plant sale. We have an orchard that we're getting established. Laying hens that we pasture raise. They get fresh salad bar twice a day, actually. And then we have rotationally grazed goats as well that we use for mostly pasture management right now. We're not selling any products from them.
We don't use any synthetic pesticides, herbicides. We focus on rotating our crops.
Soil management, crop rotations. We have different systems for weed management. We focus on ecosystem as a whole and the farm as a whole farm system. And so that plays into how we think about managing, weeds, which, people would call a symptom of a management issue, but we look at it differently in the fact that a weed is maybe an indicator of like what you're lacking in the soil, or it might be a mismanagement practice. However, it's also Mother Nature trying to cover herself. So roots in the ground is not a bad thing, regardless of what kind of roots they are. So,
like right now, the milkweed could be considered a weed, but
yeah,
not
it's
because for
pollinator habitat for our monarch butterflies if they show up on the farm. Is to be certified organic, you have to follow all the rules prescribed by the NOP, National Organic Program. Basically, the premise of it is that you're not using inputs that are prohibited. To us, there's a difference between organic certification and organic methodology. So there's soil health and all the things that, the regenerative side of agriculture is bringing to the table. Those things are a part of the organic movement. And so there's a difference between the organic movement and the organic industry. And so despite the fact that the certification is through the organic industry and, they have certain things that you can and can't use, it's more about, creating a habitat and ecosystem that we benefit from, and we bolster the amount of community that we have on our farm, including the plants and animals, pests and insects, and all those things. Like, we want to create a balanced ecosystem where we also get a product out of it. But specifically with certification, you have to pick a certifier. You have to, give them a fee for their work to help you set up an organic systems plan. And then with your organic systems plan, you'll follow that plan, and they'll have an inspector come out and check what your plan looks like and if it's a good plan, and then they'll check if you're actually adhering to the plan that you've submitted. There's no soil test requirements. However, it's more about that you're not using prohibited substances, and you're creating, they talk about things like habitat and riparian areas and how you're utilizing your farm, composting, all those input things. They're checking all of those things across the spectrum. We don't look at our farm as a factory. We look at it as an ecosystem. Yeah. So I think that's what the main thing is. When the inspector comes out, then you'll get approval or not. You can get some compliance issues with what the standards are versus what you're doing, and then you would get your certificate and you'd be certified organic, depending upon how long it had been since your land had prohibited substances put on it. 3-year time frame for inspected every year, and sometimes you get the same inspector, sometimes you don't, but we're still working through the same certifier that we have been for the last 5-6 years. We've been certified organic for 6 years now, and then our original year we were also certified organic because we had to for our lease. The biggest challenge is just doing the paperwork. Yeah, the record keeping aspect of it, mostly because it's a complicated thing that we're doing. It's not like we have, 10 acres or 40 acres or 500 acres of wheat. It's like, well, we put the wheat in, we, fertilize the field the fall before, we, however you prep the soil for that, you put the wheat in, you let it grow, you harvested the wheat, you put it in a bin. It's like, well, when we go to talk about what we're doing for production, it's like, well, how much of an acre of eggplant do you have in? It's like 0.03% of an acre in eggplant. It's like, okay, well, we're not dealing in terms of acres, we're dealing in terms of square footage. And how does that change the nuances of every plant we're growing, which is, I don't know what the list actually is, but between varietals, it's probably 100 different varieties of things and probably 30 or 40 different crops. So each one has to be handled a different way. Tomatoes are planted once, but dill is planted every 2 weeks, right? So like there's so much nuance with that. However, we're super small. So for us, it's a little bit easier because we can say, oh, everything came out of this field and it was harvested on this date, and here's our invoice to say this is where it went, or here's how we tracked it for farmers market sales or CSA boxes. And so there's nuances in there, but it's really just making sure you have everything accessible when it needs to be accessible for the inspector to come. And there's hay ground and pasture that mostly surrounds the farm. Very little like exposure for us for risk on that. So, and then we have like our veg production is actually in the middle of our acreage as well. So we have buffers around just based on our acreage because it's like the middle acre and a half of the farm specifically is veggies. It's not out of any reason that we did that. It just kind of like it made sense for us to put it there, and that's where we liked seeing the veg production essentially. Yeah, so through the TOPS program, I'm mentoring one person right now. It's more about technical assistance. So it's like, well, how are you dealing with this, problem or this symptom of your system? And yeah, record keeping, what does that look like for, his operation is very similar to ours in terms of like the amount of stuff he's growing and how are you maintaining record keeping for your small acreage. And so, yeah, those little nuances of things you don't know when you're becoming certified organic. It's nice to have a person that you can reach out to say, okay, well, how did you deal with this? And maybe that works for them and maybe it doesn't. But I think it's a back and forth too. Like, because I'm doing the mentoring, I'm also learning and going through like, what do we do for these things and how does it work for us? And is it really working for us? Sometimes you learn more from that person with what you're doing than they learned from you in that circumstance. But it's a back and forth for sure. So it's beneficial to both parties. We prioritize it because that's how we want to feed our family. We don't want to feed them food that's sprayed with stuff that we don't know what the long-term health effects are and exposures to certain types of pesticides and chemicals and all that stuff. Like, we want to feed our family the cleanest food that you can possibly feed them. But beyond that, I think that organic agriculture, when done properly, is managing ecosystems in a very good way. I think one could argue that the certain aspects in certain farms in the regenerative movement have also started to look at the whole farm ecosystem aspect as well. So there's lots of good farms that aren't certified organic that I would still support. However, those people are still utilizing a lot of the same practices that organic farmers are using and have been using for the last few decades, since organic was a differentiated thing in the marketplace. And so to me, having our farm certified organic and having people support it as a certified organic farm is important because of that. Like, we feed our family that way and we want to feed our community that way, and supporting whole farm ecosystems and eating the cleanest, highest quality food that you possibly can is extremely important. Yeah. Extremely important to us. So I want consumers and people who purchase stuff from our farm to know our passion for this comes from the desire to have the best food available in the marketplace, and that what we believe is in every purchase that they make. Like, we're not cutting corners because it's cheaper or easier or any of those things. We're doing it this way because we believe this is the best way to feed people. And we're still working on how it works on a larger scale in terms of like how the broader food system that is currently broken can mend itself in a better direction. But we see us putting our energies into this as a important step in that direction.